Hollywood is full of shocking stories, but few are as surprising as stars who became mothers while they were still incredibly young. Some were teenagers, others barely adults, when motherhood changed everything. Today, we uncover 17 celebrities who became mothers shockingly young. Subscribe to Hollywood Legends Remembered and let's begin. Aretha Franklin. Long before the world called her the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin was facing adulthood at an age when most girls were still worrying about school. On January 28, 1955, she gave birth to her first son, Clarence. Aretha was only 12 years old. Motherhood did not immediately remove her from ordinary teenage life. Franklin later recalled that she still wanted to spend time with friends while her grandmother's sister and cousin helped care for Clarence. She returned to school and continued developing the extraordinary gospel voice already attracting attention at her father C.L. Franklin's Detroit church. Then less than 2 years later, her life changed again. On January 22, 1957, Aretha welcomed her second son, Edward. She was still only 14. Can you imagine raising 2 children before even reaching your 16th birthday? By that point, music was becoming more than a childhood gift. Franklin had already recorded gospel material and performed with her father's traveling revival program. As her career expanded, family support became essential in caring for her children while she traveled and performed. At 18, Franklin moved to New York and signed with Columbia Records. Years later, Atlantic Records would transform her into the superstar behind Respect, Think, and Chain of Fools. Franklin eventually became the mother of 4 sons. But the beginning of that journey remains startling. Before the Grammys, presidential performances, and international fame, Aretha Franklin had already experienced 2 pregnancies and become a mother twice while she was still a child herself. Loretta Young. At 22, Loretta Young was already one of Hollywood's most recognizable young actresses. What audiences could not see was that behind the carefully controlled studio photographs and glamorous premieres, she was preparing to become a mother under circumstances that could have destroyed her career. In 1935, Young starred opposite Clark Gable in The Call of the Wild. Gable was 34 and married while Young was unmarried and deeply Catholic. Later that year, Young became pregnant. In an era when major studios enforced morality clauses and an unmarried actress having a baby could trigger a public scandal, the pregnancy was kept almost completely secret. Young traveled abroad and then withdrew from public view during its later stages. Can you imagine becoming a first-time mother at only 22 while having to pretend to the entire world that you were never pregnant? On November 6, 1935, Young gave birth to a daughter, Judy, in Venice, California. For months, the baby was kept away from public attention and later spent time in a Catholic orphanage. When Judy was about 19 months old, Young brought her home and publicly presented her as an adopted child. The truth remained hidden for decades. Judy grew up without being told that Young was her biological mother, or that Clark Gable was her father. She finally confronted Young as an adult and later revealed her story publicly in the 1994 memoir Uncommon Knowledge. Loretta Young eventually had 2 more children after marrying producer Tom Lewis. But her first experience of motherhood was radically different. At just 22, she gave birth while simultaneously protecting one of Hollywood's most closely guarded secrets. Oprah Winfrey. Long before Oprah Winfrey became one of the most powerful women in American media, she went through motherhood at an age when most girls were still worrying about school. At only 14, Winfrey became pregnant after a childhood marked by sexual abuse. She kept the pregnancy hidden while carrying enormous fear and shame about what would happen when her family discovered it. The situation became especially frightening after she moved in with her father, Vernon Winfrey. Oprah later recalled hearing him speak harshly about the disgrace he believed a teenage pregnancy would bring to the family while he had no idea his daughter was already pregnant. The pressure became overwhelming, and she eventually went into premature labor. Can you imagine facing pregnancy, childbirth, and the fear of your entire future collapsing when you were only 14? Winfrey gave birth to a premature baby boy. The child survived only a short time before dying. In 1990, she publicly confirmed the story, stating that her baby had been born prematurely and died shortly afterward. For years, this remained one of the most private parts of her life. Oprah later spoke openly about the complicated emotions surrounding the loss and about the pain she felt when a relative sold the story to a tabloid. She eventually gave the baby the name Canaan, explaining that the name represented new land and new life. Oprah never became a biological mother again. Her only experience of giving birth happened at 14 under circumstances filled with fear, secrecy, and loss, decades before the world knew her name. Judy Garland. By the time Judy Garland became a mother, she had already lived through more of Hollywood than many performers experienced in an entire career. She had been working since childhood, signed with MGM as a teenager, and became internationally famous as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. Yet when her first daughter arrived, Garland herself was still only 23. Garland married director Vincente Minnelli on June 15, 1945, after working with him on Meet Me in St. Louis. Less than 9 months later, on March 12, 1946, she gave birth to Liza Minnelli in Hollywood. Can you imagine already being one of the most famous women in America while learning how to become a mother at only 23? Motherhood arrived while Garland's MGM career was still moving at an exhausting pace. Soon after Liza's birth, she returned to movies, appearing in productions including The Pirate Easter Parade and In the Good Old Summertime. In that 1949 film, 3-year-old Liza even appeared briefly on screen with her mother. Garland later had 2 more children with her third husband, Sid Luft, daughter Lorna Luft in 1952, and son Joey Luft in 1955. What makes Garland's first experience of motherhood remarkable is how young she still was, despite already seeming like a Hollywood veteran. At 23, she was simultaneously a wife, new mother, major movie star, and the financial center of an enormous career. Liza would eventually grow into an Oscar-winning performer herself, creating one of entertainment history's most famous mother-daughter legacies. Jayne Mansfield. Years before the platinum blonde hair, glamorous gowns, and carefully cultivated bombshell image, Jayne Mansfield was a teenage girl in Texas facing an adult responsibility, unusually early. She met Paul Mansfield while still in high school, married him at 17, and before that year was over, she had become a mother. On November 8, 1950, Mansfield gave birth to her first daughter, Jane Marie Mansfield. She was only 17 herself, still several years away from the Hollywood career that would eventually make her one of the most photographed women of the 1950s. Can you imagine raising a baby at 17 while still believing you could somehow build a completely different life for yourself? Motherhood did not end Mansfield's ambitions. Instead of settling permanently into life as a homemaker, she continued studying, including drama courses at Southern Methodist University and the University of Texas at Austin, while appearing in local theatrical productions. After Paul returned from military service, Mansfield pushed for the family to relocate to Los Angeles so she could seriously pursue acting. That gamble eventually worked. By the mid-1950s, Mansfield was appearing in Hollywood films, and her breakout years brought movies such as The Girl Can't Help It and Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter. Her family also continued growing. Mansfield eventually became the mother of 5 children, including actress Mariska Hargitay, long before fame transformed her into a Hollywood sex symbol. However, Jayne Mansfield had already crossed one enormous threshold. She became someone's mother while she was still only 17 herself. Joan Bennett. In September 1926, 16-year-old Joan Bennett married John M. Fox in London. She came from a celebrated theatrical family, but she was not yet the film noir star audiences would later recognize. At an age when most girls were still completing school, Bennett had already entered a marriage that would make her a mother before 18. By 17, she was pregnant. Her daughter Adrienne Ralston Fox was born on February 20th, 1928, only 7 days before Bennett's 18th birthday. She had not yet established the screen career that would later define her. Motherhood arrived inside a marriage that was already failing. 5 months after the birth, Bennett obtained a divorce in Los Angeles, with the case recorded as being based on allegations of her husband's alcoholism. Could a teenager fully understand the weight of becoming a wife, a mother, and then a divorcee in less than 2 years? That same year, Bennett entered the family profession as an adult performer. At 18, she appeared beside her father, Richard Bennett, in the Broadway production Jarnagin. Important film roles in Bulldog Drummond and Disraeli followed in 1929, quickly transforming the young divorced mother into a rising screen actress. While Hollywood promoted her youthful beauty, her private life already carried experiences far beyond her age. The early marriage left a lasting reminder. Bennett later successfully petitioned a court to change her daughter's name to Diana Bennett Markey, after marrying producer Gene Markey. She eventually became known for Little Women, Scarlet Street, and Dark Shadows. Yet her first demanding role began before any of them, a 17-year-old mother rebuilding her life while trying to create an identity and career of her own. Jane Russell. While still in her teens, Jane Russell discovered she was pregnant by her boyfriend Bob Waterfield. She had not yet become the Hollywood star of The Outlaw or Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. She was an unmarried young woman in an era when pregnancy outside marriage could bring humiliation, family disgrace, and permanent damage to a woman's future. She sought an illegal abortion from an unlicensed practitioner. Russell later said the procedure caused terrible pain and severe bleeding. By the time she reached a hospital, she was dangerously ill. Her doctor reportedly asked who had done such damage to her body. Russell survived, but she believed the injuries left her unable to become pregnant again. How could a teenager understand that one desperate decision might shape every future chance she had to become a mother? Russell eventually married Waterfield in 1943. When the couple tried to start a family, biological motherhood did not happen. They adopted a daughter, Tracy, followed by 2 sons, Thomas and Robert. The process was not simple. Her adoption of Thomas, an Irish child living in Britain, attracted government scrutiny and public criticism, but Russell refused demands that she return him. Her experience moved beyond her own household. In the 1950s, Russell founded the World Adoption International Fund, known as WAIF, and spent decades helping children find permanent homes. The woman Hollywood marketed through her body ultimately devoted much of her private life to building the family that a dangerous teenage procedure had once made seem impossible. Gene Tierney. At 22, Gene Tierney was already one of Hollywood's rising stars when her first pregnancy became the beginning of a lifelong family tragedy. Married to fashion designer Oleg Cassini, she was expecting a much-wanted child while continuing public appearances connected to the war effort. During the pregnancy, Tierney contracted rubella. She later recalled that a female fan approached her at a party and admitted she had slipped out of quarantine while sick because she desperately wanted to meet her favorite actress. Whether that single encounter caused the infection cannot be proven with certainty, but rubella during pregnancy was known to pose devastating risks to an unborn baby. Tierney's daughter Daria was born prematurely in October 1943. She weighed just over 3 pounds and was deaf, severely visually impaired, and developmentally disabled. Doctors told Tierney that her daughter would require specialized care for the rest of her life. The young mother had entered pregnancy expecting an ordinary family future. Instead, she faced medical decisions, financial responsibilities, and grief for the life her child would never have. How does a young mother accept that one illness has permanently changed her child's future? Daria eventually lived in specialized institutions because her needs exceeded what the family could provide at home. Tierney continued acting, appearing in films such as Laura and Leave Her to Heaven, but the pain did not remain outside the studio gates. She later struggled with severe depression and underwent psychiatric treatment, including electroconvulsive therapy. Tierney was not a teenage mother, but at 22 she was still young, famous, and unprepared for a pregnancy that demanded a lifetime of difficult choices. Fantasia Barrino. Before Fantasia Barrino became the winner of American Idol, she was a 16-year-old girl in High Point, North Carolina, facing an unexpected pregnancy after leaving school. She had dropped out following a sexual assault and the humiliation she experienced afterward. With her education interrupted and her confidence badly damaged, Fantasia entered a relationship that she later described as physically and emotionally abusive. Her daughter Zion Kwari Barrino was born on August 8, 2001, when Fantasia was 17. There was no recording contract or comfortable home waiting for them. Fantasia struggled to afford basic necessities, sometimes eating instant noodles or grits while caring for her baby in a rundown apartment. She earned whatever money she could by singing at weddings, churches, and local events, but financial insecurity kept them constantly close to crisis. How could a teenager protect her daughter when she was still trying to escape violence and rebuild her own life? Motherhood eventually gave Fantasia a reason to leave the abusive relationship. She wanted Zion to grow up seeing something different, even though Fantasia had no diploma and few clear opportunities. In 2004, at 19, she auditioned for the third season of American Idol. Her raw voice, barefoot performances, and emotional rendition of Summertime carried her to victory. The public saw a young singer becoming famous overnight, but Zion had already witnessed the years that came before it. Fantasia later said her daughter motivated her to pursue everything she accomplished. The teenage pregnancy did not make her life easier. It placed another life in her hands at the exact moment her own future seemed most uncertain. Dorothy Dandridge. Dorothy Dandridge was a 20-year-old singer and actress when she became pregnant with her first and only child. She had married dancer Harold Nicholas in 1942 and temporarily stepped away from performing, hoping marriage and motherhood would provide the stable family life she had never experienced growing up. Harold Suzanne Nicholas was born on September 2, 1943, after a difficult delivery. The baby suffered a serious brain injury that left her with profound developmental disabilities. Dandridge later blamed herself, believing that waiting too long before seeking medical help had contributed to the damage. Nicholas disputed parts of her account, and the exact medical cause was never firmly established. What became undeniable was that Harold would need constant supervision and specialized care throughout her life. How could such a young mother prepare for the knowledge that her daughter might never speak live independently or understand the world around her? Dandridge searched for treatment and paid for private caregivers for years. Her troubled marriage deteriorated, leaving her to shoulder much of the emotional and financial responsibility alone. She returned to nightclub work and acting, partly because Harold's care was expensive. Even after becoming the first black woman nominated for the Best Actress Oscar, Dandridge still faced limited roles, racial discrimination, and an income that could disappear between engagements. By 1963, debt and collapsing finances made round-the-clock private care impossible. Dandridge placed Harold in a state institution, a decision she described as emotionally devastating. She continued to carry photographs of her daughter but died in 1965, only 2 years after the separation. Vivien Leigh. Before Scarlett O'Hara made her world-famous, Vivien Leigh was a 19-year-old new mother trying to reconcile domestic expectations with an ambition she could not abandon. Born Vivien Mary Hartley, she had married London barrister Lee Holman in December 1932 and became pregnant soon afterward while still at the beginning of her acting training. Their daughter Suzanne was born on October 12, 1933, just weeks before Lee's 20th birthday. Marriage had placed her inside a respectable, comfortable household, but motherhood did not silence her desire for the stage. She returned to her studies and relied heavily on a nanny while seeking professional work. Within 2 years, she was appearing in British films and attracting attention in London theater. Could a teenage mother pursue an acting career without being judged for leaving the life society had chosen for her? Lee's determination created an increasingly divided existence. Suzanne remained closely connected to her father's home, while Lee's work demanded travel rehearsals and long absences. After Leigh fell in love with Laurence Olivier, both marriages eventually ended, and Holman retained primary custody of Suzanne. Even so, photographs and correspondence preserved in Lee's archive show that mother and daughter remained part of each other's lives. Leigh hoped to have another child with Olivier, but those hopes ended painfully. She suffered a miscarriage while making Caesar and Cleopatra in 1944, and another after becoming pregnant during the stage production South Sea Bubble in 1956. The second loss was followed by months of severe depression. Hollywood remembered her as a woman of fierce ambition. Motherhood had begun much earlier, before fame, before her first major role, and before she was fully out of her teens. Lynn Spears. In December 2007, Lynn Spears was the 16-year-old face of Nickelodeon's Zoe 101 when she revealed that she was 12 weeks pregnant. She had discovered it through a home test, confirmed it with a doctor, and then spent roughly 2 weeks telling almost no one while deciding what she wanted to do. The father was her teenage boyfriend, Casey Aldridge. The announcement immediately became international news. Parents accused her of disappointing the young girls who watched her while tabloids published stories about her family relationship and unborn child. Spears later said she had been too embarrassed to ask a doctor about birth control because she feared being judged as a children's television star. She accepted responsibility for becoming pregnant, but rejected claims that she was trying to make teenage motherhood look glamorous. Who was a frightened 16-year-old supposed to protect first her audience, her career, or the child growing inside her? Spears also recalled feeling pressure from relatives and members of her professional team to make the situation disappear. Instead, she chose to continue the pregnancy and withdrew from Hollywood, living away from Los Angeles in an attempt to escape the cameras. Paparazzi still followed her during much of the pregnancy. Her daughter, Maddie Brianne Aldridge, was born in June 2008 when Spears was 17. Contrary to a lasting rumor, the pregnancy did not cause Zoe 101 to be canceled. Filming had already ended months earlier and the remaining episodes aired as scheduled. Spears stepped away from acting and concentrated on raising Maddie in the South. Her career slowed, but the decision gave her daughter something Jamie Lynn believed fame could not provide: a childhood built away from Hollywood's constant attention. Keisha Castle-Hughes. At 13, Keisha Castle-Hughes walked onto the Academy Awards stage of attention after her first film, Whale Rider, earned her a Best Actress nomination. She was the youngest nominee ever in that category at the time. Just 3 years later, the public stopped discussing her performance and began judging a far more personal development. She was pregnant at 16. Castle-Hughes said the pregnancy was unexpected and initially frightening, but she quickly decided to continue it. The father was her longtime boyfriend, Bradley Hull. Rather than being given space to prepare for motherhood, the teenager became the center of a national debate. Commentators questioned her maturity, her career, and whether a famous 16-year-old should be raising a child. Strangers discussed her pregnancy as though they had a right to decide what her future should look like. How could she feel excited about her baby when the reaction around her made happiness seem irresponsible? In a 2007 interview, Castle-Hughes admitted that the controversy had spoiled much of her pregnancy. Although her family and Hull supported her, she felt pressured to hide and guilty for wanting to celebrate. The criticism was especially intense because audiences still pictured her as the young girl from Whale Rider, while she had recently portrayed Mary in The Nativity Story. On April 25, 2007, shortly after turning 17, she gave birth to a daughter, Felicity Amore, following 3 difficult days of labor. Motherhood did not end Castle-Hughes's acting career, but it forced her to grow up while the public watched every decision. She later called Felicity the best thing that had happened to her and credited her family support with helping her manage motherhood at such a young age. Naomi Judd. Naomi Judd was still known as Diana Ellen Judd when an unexpected pregnancy changed the direction of her life. In 1963, she was a 17-year-old honor student in Ashland, Kentucky, playing piano at church and preparing for her final year of high school. She gave birth to Christina, later known as Winona, on May 30, 1964, only 2 weeks before her graduation ceremony. Being unmarried and pregnant carried severe social consequences in her small southern community. Naomi later recalled that when her father asked whether she loved the man involved, she initially answered no. His response made the expectation clear: marriage was the solution families chose in 1963. Naomi married Michael Simonella in January 1964, hoping to give her baby a home and a family name. At 17, was marriage truly her choice, or simply the only acceptable path people around her could imagine? The arrangement protected Naomi from public disgrace, but it created a secret that lasted for decades. Winona grew up believing Simonella was her biological father. Only when she was around 30 did she learn that her father was Charles Jordan, Naomi's former boyfriend. Winona never met him before his death, and she later acknowledged feeling deeply angry about the truth being withheld. Naomi's teenage pregnancy was only the beginning of a difficult journey. After moving to California, having a second daughter, Ashley, and divorcing Simonella, she struggled to support both children. She relied on public assistance, entered nursing school, and often worried about keeping food on the table. Years later, the daughter born just before Naomi's graduation became her musical partner. Their strained relationship found an unexpected language in harmony, eventually transforming a teenage mother and her first child into the Judds. Roseanne Barr. Years before Roseanne Barr became a groundbreaking television comedian, she was a pregnant teenager living far from home with almost no money and no clear way to raise a child. Barr became pregnant at 17 and gave birth shortly after turning 18, long before fame offered her any protection or stability. In May 1971, Barr delivered a baby girl at a Salvation Army home for unmarried mothers in Denver. She later explained that she was not emotionally or financially prepared for motherhood. Her family also feared the social shame surrounding an unmarried pregnancy. Barr was allowed to care for the baby for about a week before placing her through Jewish Family and Children's Services. The child was adopted and given the name Brandy Brown. How could an 18-year-old say goodbye while still believing that the separation might not be permanent? Barr remembered making an extraordinary promise to her newborn. She would keep her own name, become famous, and find her again when she turned 18. For nearly 2 decades, Brandy grew up with another family while Barr married, raised more children, and slowly built a career in stand-up comedy. In 1988, the sitcom Roseanne made her one of television's biggest stars. Their reunion did not happen privately. In 1989, the National Enquirer obtained adoption information and contacted both women. Barr initially felt that something deeply personal had been invaded, but she met Brandy when her daughter was 17. They recognized their resemblance immediately and gradually formed a lasting relationship. Gloria Swanson. Before Gloria Swanson became one of silent cinema's highest-paid stars, she was a teenage actress working in short comedies for Max Sennett. On March 27, 1916, Swanson married fellow actor Wallace Beery in Pasadena. According to the chronology preserved with her papers, she was 17. Beery was nearly 13 years older. The marriage shattered her romantic expectations almost immediately. In her 1980 autobiography, Swanson on Swanson, she alleged that an intoxicated Beery sexually assaulted her on their wedding night. She later discovered she was pregnant and wanted the child despite being young, financially dependent, and only beginning to establish herself in films. Swanson wrote that when she began feeling unwell, Beery gave her medicine without explaining what it contained. After taking it, she became violently ill and lost the pregnancy. She believed he had deliberately given her a substance intended to end it because he did not want to become a father. Since Beery had died decades before the memoir appeared, the incident is documented through Swanson's testimony and should be presented as her account rather than an independently proven finding. What power could a pregnant 17-year-old exercise when even the medicine placed in her hands could not be trusted? Swanson left Beery after only a few months, although their divorce was finalized later. She continued working and soon escaped the slapstick roles she disliked. Under Cecil B. DeMille, she became a major dramatic star, but the pregnancy she lost remained tied to the abusive first marriage she described publicly only many decades afterward.